Welcome to the Smith and Rowland Show. Let's join our hosts, Alan Smith and Jeff Rowland.
It is another day and another podcast by those that everyone anticipates is going to come out with great truth.
Once again.
Yeah, but they couldn't be here, so they're stuck with us.
Okay. The Smith and Rowland Show. Hello, Mr. Rowley.
Hello, Mr. Alley.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good deal. Well, we see that our president is a little perturbed.
He's hot under the
morning.
collar. He's hot under the collar.
He really pulled a good one off yesterday. They had everybody coming to the table. They were ceasefire.
They
kissed and hugged and made up, and somebody tripped across the cord and shot a blame missile.
They did. Yeah. Started everything kind of in a downward spiral.
Yeah.
But we don't know where it's going to end. I mean, it's still kind of trying to float out, I think. And
well, I think Netanyahu, Iran, they went ahead and shot a missile. Then Netanyahu unleashed his whole military arsenal upon Iran, which is a little bit overkill.
I think that's the problem. It was an unproportionate response.
That's been the criticism the whole time, even with the Gaza.
Yeah,
they're just saying that that's an overreaction to, but who knows? Yeah. If it is, I mean, I don't know how things are supposed to be equal in war, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, the missions seem to be different for both things. Like, so you got Hamas that comes across the border, they murder and rape and kill and behead babies and the whole deal. So there is a response to that. Then you got Iran over here that's funding it, and Iran building nuclear weapons to annihilate you.
Well, I remember Iran having Americans and Israelis and everything lined up on their knees, and they were going down through there cutting their throats.
Yeah.
In orange jumpsuits.
Yeah, that's right. General Jack Keane.
Making a spectacle.
General Jack Keane reported that Iran is responsible for over 2,000 American deaths just in the last 10 years, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they're your Sunday school teacher or something. Even though
you're right,
we have a large faction out there that try to get them to portray that. But nonetheless, what we got going on now is I'm not a Israeli and I'm not an Arab. I'm an American, and my American president is upset this morning.
He is very.
He was trying to help settle this thing. Mm-hmm. Israelis didn't like Iran having nuclear capabilities, so the president said, okay, I'll take that out of the way. Now what's your problem?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, basically. So he said, okay, I took your problem out of the way. Now you shouldn't have a problem. Mm-hmm. And Netanyahu's acting like he's still got a problem.
Yeah, it's almost like, if you look at it in the natural sense, it's almost as if, okay, now Israel's acting like Iran was. Then I think that's what's got President Trump.
Well, once you agree to allow Trump to come in as a mediator, then you need to work with the mediator.
Yeah, if you're going to partner with a country, then you need to stay in partnership
with the country. Yeah.
If you're not,
you're not. And that's okay for Netanyahu to call up Trump and say, hey, I'm hot, to shot a missile at us.
Yeah, and I'm going after him, and I don't care what you say.
If that's what he did. That's
basically what he did.
And Trump didn't like that.
And he didn't like it.
Because he didn't put a lot of time in it.
Yeah,
actually spent a lot of money to
tons
make old Netanyahu, as I heard this one fella calls him Yahoo, make old Yahoo happy.
Make Yahoo happy. Thing is, we did have some vested interest in it as far as the nuclear part, because Iran, they possessed intercontinental ballistic missiles. Mm-hmm. They could have equipped it with a nuclear warhead and reached the eastern seaboard of the United States.
That's right.
They had issued death and been saying death to America for however many years. So you got all that going on. So the investment is not just on behalf of Israel, it's on behalf of our own national interests.
Even remember back before 79, Iran was the vacation spot of that part of the world.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, but I watched a documentary on it last night.
Absolutely.
And up until the day of 1979, it was basically a Western society. Mm-hmm. And the prince then, it was basically you were in a very sophisticated Western city, so to speak. But it still had the Arab flair and all of that to
Yeah.
it. So, but it was a vacation spot. Iran was.
Yeah.
And it was growing. It was seen as the place to go to, the place to be at, up until 79 when these far-out Muslims took it over. And then women voted, women worked, women were in places of policies, of
That's
politics.
Right. That's right.
Yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden they had to go to head coverings and where they are today. So as far as the women's rights, if you want to call it that, or just, I don't even call it women's rights, I just call it human rights, just being a human.
Yeah, well, they just basically went from secular society to Sharia law.
That's exactly what they did.
And Sharia law says that women have no place. They're basically they're abused.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just true.
Right.
Not allowed to be educated or anything else.
No.
So in that respect, I understand it. There's another aspect to this that sometimes gets lost. So you got Israel that's the size of about the state of New Jersey. So a missile lobbed into Israel will create proportionately more damage than a missile going into Iran. Because Iran covers a large...
Oh, yeah, it's huge. It's like Texas or bigger, isn't it?
Double the size of Texas.
Okay, double Texas.
So you've got to say it's unproportional. I think that perspective needs to be added to the conversation, I think. So I understand President Trump being hot, especially with the negotiations and everything that's going on. And an end game.
Well, I mean,
however, I understand Yahoo's response to some degree. Could he have waited to have seen? Okay, that's one missile. It could have been launched by a rogue general. It could have been something that got. It's one missile. According to Trump, they intercepted. According to Israel, they didn't. According to Israel, it killed some people. So. You've got, I don't know what the story is, the true story is on that. I don't know. I have mixed emotions about that. I understand both sides a little bit. I understand why Netanyahu did what he did. I understand why President Trump's hot. I understand both sides.
Well, to me, both sides are wrong.
To some degree, yeah. And both sides are right. To some degree.
I don't know if it's right to blow somebody up, but I think both sides are definitely wrong.
Are you talking about Iran and
Israel?
Yeah, okay. In that regard, yeah. Netanyahu is responding because he is convinced that Iran is not going to agree by any kind of negotiation that goes on with Trump. And that deal with Iran, the ceasefire, and Donald Trump saying, okay, he has obliterated their nuclear capabilities. There was a press release that came out where Iran stated they're going to resume their nuclear aspirations. And if that's the case, then you've indeed got a problem that exists that I don't know that you can even get out of in terms of in a political way. According to the Word of God, there is not going to be a political solution to this problem until the Antichrist comes into power, and then even his agreement is going to only last 3.5 years. So there's a couple of, I think, important things to understand concerning what's happening and what's going on. You have to understand the fact that the Antichrist, who is rising to power, what this actually does is it leads us to the text in Acts 1, verse 6. And that's basically everything that's going on and that's went on leads us to this same question that the apostles had of the Lord back in Acts 1 before Jesus left. Yeah. It says, when they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel?
There you go.
And that seems to be the perplexing question that's got the whole world upset, and that's got the world at war, that's got the world coming.
This one Bible verse.
This one verse, this one question.
And they asked Jesus.
this. And that's what is going on. That's what we're seeing. Everything that we're seeing that go on in the world, and I would even include Russia and Ukraine in this equation, revolves around this question. Wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? Indicating the kingdom was there.
Well, at one time it had to be to restore it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they're looking to a future promise of the Messiah coming to Jerusalem and ruling and reigning in Jerusalem. And so that's the question. I think we need to respond this way. Number one, will there be a restoration of the kingdom to Israel?
Well, I'd have to believe that if you had the 12 apostles, well, 11 of them at that time, but I'd have to believe that the apostles were not asking amiss. They had to, that is proof right here that they're still looking for a literal kingdom on the earth. Now, you and I are of the persuasion, based off the Word of God, that God creates things that you can see to teach us about things that we can't see. So we're persuaded that we're like the apostles here. We believe that God is going to restore a literal kingdom to Israel with a Davidic throne and Abrahamic land.
Well, that was their question here. If you're in a restoration process, it's to the point of what was. So if there ever was a literal kingdom, the question is there going to be a literal kingdom?
Well, we know that Rome, that they weren't operating under that at that moment because they had been besieged by Rome.
Right.
So they were saying, okay, Rome, we've been besieged by Rome, so when are we going to be in charge again of this land? Now the temple was still there.
Yeah.
Then you made a good point here a few days ago that in that one verse he said he was going to rebuild again the tabernacle of David.
Yeah.
And you pointed out the tabernacle of David and the temple that was there is actually two different.
Those are two different things.
Two different things, which I think is a very good topic to get into one day. But nonetheless, the temple was there, but the government wasn't there.
Right.
So they're saying, when are you going to restore unto them the kingdom? So we know that the kingdom can be fallen and you still have a temple.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Point B. Now, the Jews today feel like we can just get this temple rebuilt.
That's right.
That will have the presence of God.
Yeah.
This is proof that you can have a temple and not have the presence of God.
That's right.
And so, but they were wanting to know, since Jesus, he went away. So this is at the last part of Luke, which is the first part of Acts. He went away in the clouds and he was going to come again. I think the Mount of Olives, he'll be coming again there, same place. But nonetheless, they were asking him before he did that when are you going to restore again this kingdom? And today we have people arguing over Israel has been back to the land now. They got the land. They got the Abrahamic part. They got part of the Abrahamic part. Now they're looking for the Davidic part and the finished of the fulfillment of the Abrahamic part, which is land.
Right.
The Davidic part, which is the king sitting on.
Yeah.
The Davidic part will be fulfilled at the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
And so, but we're seeing the Abrahamic covenant, which has to come first. You got to have a land before you can put a throne on it. So
that's right.
We're seeing the land come, and it's on its way. And now there's such a huge. Really think about it, Jeff. You just said how big Israel was. It's not any bigger than a thimble, as far as a map's concerned. But yet the whole world revolves around. All the world news yesterday was about Iran and Israel. And it is
basically
such a.
In my whole lifetime, it's revolved around. Since '48, it's revolved around Israel. The news of the world is revolved around Israel, and everything that we see happen in the world revolves around Israel. Whether they want to agree, whether they want to admit that or not, it's true. Even alliances of other nations are you a friend to Israel or a foe? The entire Middle East trip that President Trump took earlier revolved around Israel. Making alliances to secure the border nations around Israel. That's why he's so chummy with Saudi Arabia. That's why he released the sanctions against Syria, who, by the way, thanked President Trump for all of those type things. Those are border states around Israel that he spent his time with. that is reflected in Psalm 83. What's happening now reflects Ezekiel 30, 38, and 39.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an Ezekiel 38 and 39 because there's an Ezekiel 37
Mm-hmm.
that we saw literally kind of fulfilled in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
So, the whole world revolves around some land over there that is about the size of the state of New Jersey that God said is my land. And I'm going to put my people
on there
in that land.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, my son will rule and reign from that place in Jerusalem. And Jesus wept over Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
the enemies constantly try to tear down this plan of God. One way you can know that you're in the plan of God is the enemy's attacking you from every front.
From every side. From every side.
That's the only guarantee that what you're doing is the will of God.
Yeah. And I would almost say, if you can draw any kind of conclusion on these things. You can draw all kinds of conclusions about these things. But I would say this. The border states tried to destroy Israel in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
They failed in a military type way. You had Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, all of it, coming against them. They failed. So now it appears as though the plan going forward around those bordering nations is theological. What you see with the other nations of the world that will entail Russia and Turkey, Germany, China, all of those nations is still a military operation. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why I say in Netanyahu's defense, and I'm not trying to defend him necessarily, but in his defense, he does face an existential threat from those nations of complete annihilation of his country. Though I understand it, it'd be kind of difficult to play some kind of a political game of wait and see. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. However, I do get that being in league with the United States of America and our military power, there should be a little more partnership on his behalf with a president that just sent some bunker buster bombs over there and blowed up.
Just sent you $300 million missions there with all them planes and fuel and bombs and
did what Israel was not capable of doing.
Yeah, wasn't anybody else capable of doing. So, I think that was a bad move on both of them's part. But the truth be known, I'm going to go out on a limb here. If Iran was agreeing to a ceasefire, all the rhetoric and all of the talk, and there's no doubt in my mind that you've got people down the line that despise and hate USA, Netanyahu. Then somebody walks in and says, okay, we're not firing any more missiles. I'm sure you got individuals there. It's hot. You mean to tell me, then you're going to, and I'll just tell you one thing. Pop.
Yeah, that's right. Watch me push this button.
Watch this. And I, from my seat, one person can mess up this whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like happened. That's the reason that Netanyahu is I'm sorry, I'm going to say the idiot word, is kind of an idiot.
For playing into
that hand.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I thought he was a smarter guy than that. The truth is, that tells me he's not wanting peace any more than the guy that pushed the button on that missile.
Yeah,
we got two wild childs here that need to both be pulled. Netanyahu and that guy needs to be pulled out of their ranking. Put somebody in there that's got a little more sense at the moment. You got two warrior heads wanting to bring everybody else into it, and you got a place of the nukes has been displaced, and if they want to conjure them up again, I bet you we can find them again, and pop them again, So I personally think that if that ceasefire, Trump went over there, popped those bases, destroyed them, for them the next day to come to the table with the negotiating, the peace talks, that would have been a feather in Trump's hat that would reach from here to Saturn.
Yeah.
And I just don't think Netanyahu was going to let Trump walk away that victorious, just to be honest with you, based off his reaction or somebody wasn't going, because that would have been a huge feather in Trump's hat. He would have been a good, if he could have pulled that one off, that simple, that was a huge feather in his hat. And there's that the powers that be somewhere is not going to let that. And if I think anybody's pushing some of Netanyahu's old money, a lot of the old money into Israel is in the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
the Jews in the Democratic Party.
And I'll say this.
I mean, not it's kind of far fetched, but
no, it's not. It's not. We could get into the deep weeds on this deal here, but and I don't know that I could articulate my opinion on this in such a manner that it could be understood. I don't know whether I could or not, but I say this and hope that there would be some understanding. According to Daniel 9, the Antichrist is going to sign a covenant between Israel, and it doesn't say the rest of the world, though that's what most people conclude, but it doesn't say that. It says he's going to sign a covenant or affirm a covenant between Israel and many nations. A scary thing to me is that Donald Trump plays that role of doing that. While we are proponents of peace, which is right, that is an act that is described that comes from an evil person called the Antichrist. My opinion about that is that when Satan does something, he does it with such a mixture of right and wrong that you're in this dilemma. I mean, seriously, think about it. You're in a dilemma of something that looks exactly right, but is orchestrated by the enemy himself. Does that make sense? I don't know. So,
I mean, I've even fallen to people like that. Not hard to do.
It's not hard to do because there is a right response, and you can say, yeah, I agree with this response. Yet, it's basically the workings of Satan. And when he came to Eve, he came with a mixture of truth and error. He didn't deny the existence of God. Satan didn't deny the existence. He just said, hath God said?
That's what he said.
I mean, so, there's things about this that trouble me on every side. Now, that being said, Netanyahu is responding to something that from the Word of God, I'm not sure he has the perspective of. But we have the perspective of this fact. There is not going to be peace in Israel until Jesus rules from the throne in Jerusalem. That's not going to happen. Why? Because they're blinded.
And the Muslims and the Jews.
They're right, yeah. And so I don't care what ceasefire agreement that you set in motion, it's not going to hold. It cannot hold. So you can celebrate it for a momentary time, which we should. I'm not saying, but I am saying that there's always going to be human intelligence that can prove that they are trying to annihilate you. You're not going to get out from under that until there arises a person that says, I've got the whole solution here. Well, we know him to be the Antichrist. And then that's only going to be short-lived for 3.5 years.
That's right. There
is those things that's at play, especially around this question of, you going to restore the kingdom to Israel now? It is a legitimate question. They was asking a legitimate question. And it requires a response. And the response from the Lord was, it's not for you to know the times and the seasons, which indicates that there is going to be a kingdom in Israel. You just don't know when it's going to happen according to Christ.
Well, I mean, there in Matthew 19:28, Jesus said this, Jeff, talking about this literal kingdom. And Jesus said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye have followed me in the regeneration when the Son of Man, speaking of himself, shall sit in the throne of his glory.
Yeah.
That's the throne of David in Jerusalem. Ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So this is when the 12 tribes of Israel, the Jewish nation, receives Jesus as the Messiah, which is after the tribulation period, second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, here we go. And that's what Jesus was talking about there.
Yeah. He's referring to that future
to a literal kingdom.
To a literal kingdom.
And so therefore, replacement theology stumps its toe right there, is because Jesus is referring to a literal kingdom, not just one of your heart.
Well, yeah,
but a literal king. And it's okay to have it in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, he says you need to have it in your heart, but it's not going to change the fact that it's going to be literal.
That's right. And if it's just a kingdom of the heart, instead of us replacing Israel, you have to come to a conclusion that Israel replaces the church, and there is no such thing as the church. We're all just now Israel and assigned to a tribe in which one of the apostles is going to rule over us. That's the way you would have to interpret Matthew 19:28. But because there is going to be a literal kingdom, and there is a difference between Israel and the church, then you apply it the way that it's supposed to, the way he says it.
So they had to believe, and they saw fit that there was going to be a literal kingdom, which this is, if when you see this, the reason Jeff and I have been talking about the last few days is that's what's happening in Israel right now.
Right now.
Is about, Jesus, when are you going to restore the kingdom again unto Netanyahu and those Jews?
It is the motivating factor and force behind that war effort over there. This question.
They're trying to establish this kingdom.
That's exactly
And the part
right.
Jeff and I know is that's not going to be able to fully happen until he returns.
That's exactly
But it's going to be hell on earth till you
It
get
really
there.
is. Israel right now is in the business of trying to restore the kingdom.
They're trying to restore it. Yeah.
They're trying to do it. They're trying to do it in their season, in their time.
In their way.
And in their way. And they will receive the Antichrist.
And I believe God sent them Trump to help them through this little hard spot.
I do too. I absolutely
And that's the reason
do
I say he messed up, because he's not respecting what God sent him.
I agree. But that's the track record of Israel.
That is the 100% track record of Israel. And I might add Alan Smith too. So
yeah, and Jeff Rowland to be included.
Yeah. But anyway,
Lord
that
help
was
us.
the question
Yeah.
that they had. It's very legitimate, and we understand it. And as Israel's struggling to try to answer this question of Acts 1:6, when will you restore
Yes.
unto us the kingdom to Israel?
Yes.
And so they're fighting for it all they can. You know, who knows how this will end up, but well, we know how it'll end up. The Bible tells us how it'll end up.
Yeah, that's right. We just don't know if this is the time.
Yeah.
But it could be.
But if it's not,
It sure does look like
it sure does look like it.
Sure does look like it.
Well, Mr. Rowland, we're basically out of time here today.
Okay, Mr.
We'll
Smith.
pick up again here tomorrow.
And it's been such a joy. Such a joy
I know.
for you
I
to
know,
have seen
I
me
know.
today.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll have to admit that I haven't laughed so hard all day.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Joy. All right, Rowland. Say
I'll
bye.
see you.
Thank you for joining today's Smith and Rowland Show. You can check out our website at kingdompropheticsociety.org and our daily unplugged podcast at smithandrowlandshow.podbean.com. You can also join us on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify.